Listen, it is the day where we talk about the biggest pop culture stories of the week, like the new horror movie, The Substance, which I truly cannot stop thinking about it. There's also a brand new Katy Perry album that is out today. There's a lot to talk about. The group chat is here. Let's go. I'm Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Listen, there is this new movie out today. It is called The Substance. I watched it last night, and I have been just truly dying to talk about it, and I finally get a chance to talk about it. It is a horror movie about aging and beauty in Hollywood. You have Demi Moore. She plays the star. She plays Elizabeth Sparkle, who is a famous actor and fitness celebrity. She gets fired from her job when she turns 50, and then she turns to this experimental drug to recapture her youth.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself. This is The Substance.
Honestly, just hearing that, I have like full body shudders and shivers because I'm just recalling scenes from this movie. That is a trailer of The Substance. It just came out in theaters today. I've got three cultural critics here to talk about it. Mel Woods is here. Sarah-Tai Black is here. Amil Niazi is here. What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm glad that you're here so I can talk to someone about this movie because I watched it last night before I went to bed and I had terrible dreams. I had a terrible morning and I'm still just living with the sounds and sights of The Substance. Mel, I'm going to start with you. Maybe do you want to describe, without spoiling too much, can you describe what The Substance is in The Substance?
I mean, it's like this highlighter green neon goop that you inject to spawn Margaret Qualley, aka a hotter, younger you. But then there's all these rules that come with it around like swapping your consciousness and feeding things. And that how it works is really vibes. There's a lot of like beautiful instruction cards in like a bold typeface that don't say much more besides like switch. So the how it works I think is not that important, but it's all vibes. It's all goopy sloopy, and it also does not involve good needle etiquette. Like there's a lot of injecting in this movie and there's not a single sharps disposal anywhere at all, and that distresses me, but I think it is fun and good to me.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's truly for the amount of needle stuff that there is in this movie. I just would have thought someone should pay some attention to this. Sarah-Tai, you've got nothing but love for Demi Moore in this movie. Tell us about her performance in The Substance.
I am just obsessed with her in this. I don't know how she came to become involved in this project, but I'm so glad that she did because Coralie's filmmaking is so just like
that's Coralie Farja, the director of this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just avoiding saying the French last name.
Coralie Farja, we got it. We're gonna get through
familiarity. It's French fear. Fear.
Got it.
Her films are so just like delightfully demented, so like gleefully twisted, and it's such like an interesting space for Demi Moore to be in, especially at like this point in her career. It's I think like the middle part of the film is really all Demi's, where she's like descending into this like madcap hag chaos while still also being really vulnerable and campy at the same time. It's something that's like completely different for her, and I loved just seeing the way that she just went all in. I think that people are going to be really surprised. I think that if you're like a childhood striptease fan, don't think about that sentence too much. This is going to be like
Striptease the movie.
You.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
If you're a childhood Striptease the movie fan, this will be like a fun new entry in Demi's filmography for you.
You know what I love about you, Sarah-Tai, is you often give me sentences that no one's ever said before. Never on earth has anybody said that out loud, and I love that for us. Emil, let's talk more about Demi, because I think like. First of all, there was this scene where she's just taken off her makeup. That's the only thing that is happening in the scene, and is one of the most like horrifying and heartbreaking and just horrific things you could possibly ever see. Talk to me about her as a casting choice in this movie. Why do you think she makes sense for this movie?
Well, I think she's the perfect choice to play Elizabeth Sparkle. That's the actress's name. Because if you're familiar with sort of her rise and fall and rise again, then you know that Demi Moore has always been under scrutiny for the way she looks, for the way she tackles aging, for her approach to sort of what you can do with the human body. You know, Sarah-Tai mentioned striptease. That was a huge sort of production because she was going to be fully nude. And that was a time when actresses were still sort of wrestling with whether you could still be taken seriously if you did full frontal nudity. And she got, you know, $12.5 million for that movie. She sculpted her body down. Then, you know, G.I. Jane, she shaved her head. She, you know, put on a lot of muscle, again, sort of dramatically transformed her body. And we know her, her physicality. We know her for being sort of unabashed about what she looks like. But we also know the darker side of that because she's been so candid about how she basically became obsessed with what she looked like, obsessed with what her body could do, and basically, you know, controlling it. You know, she struggled with eating disorder. She sort of became infamous for allegedly spending $250,000 on a full body makeover to be 40 years old in a bikini in Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. I mean, just thinking about that, I remember when that came out, audiences were shocked and amazed that she was in a bikini at 40 years old. My God, I'm 40 years old. And I can't imagine someone being like, good for you for still being alive and looking okay.
Yeah.
It's shocking. But, you know, Brat Summer's over. Hag Autumn is in full bloom. And Demi Moore is exactly the person to usher it in with this movie.
I think the idea of being obsessed with controlling every part of your appearance and being known for that, Mel, like that's the thing that sort of gives the movie its propulsive power. And then when you sort of watch it, I mean, like it's a body horror movie. And the thing about being a body horror movie is that, first of all, I don't have the stomach for this all the time. Like there are some truly grotesque scenes to get the point across in this movie. How do you feel about that genre as a vehicle to sort of talk about aging, do you think, Mel?
You know, I really like it. I was thinking a lot while watching this movie about, from a few years ago, M. Night Shyamalan's The Beach That Makes You Old. A movie that similarly kind of deals.
It's just called The Beach.
You know, emotion. It's just called Old, actually.
Sorry, that's right. Sorry.
But you know, it's this movie that it deals similarly with this idea about like aging faster than you kind of, and your body changing in these ways that you don't have consent to. But what I really love here in the substance is that the practical effects, you can just like feel it in your bones and in your joints and in yourself. And I think that this is one of the best recent uses of like practical effects I've seen in a horror movie in a really long time. It's just so visceral. I know that's an overused word in these sorts of things.
No, it's real here.
Like
it's real.
if you have issues with fingernails, if you have issues with teeth, if you have issues with eyeballs, if you have issues with skin, bones, joints, maybe this movie isn't for you. If you love the idea of, I think I saw an interview with the director where she said that she used 36,000 liters of fake blood in one scene. If you love the idea of that, this movie is for you. And this movie is for me in that sense. So, you know, I think that, you know, all of us have issues with aging and with gender and with these perceptions of us put upon us by society, and to see them kind of dramatized and made fun but icky and weird and uncomfortable in this way is so refreshing and interesting. And I think it does it a disservice to just be like, it grapples with big ideas about aging and bodies. It's like, no, it doesn't just grapple with them. It just like breaks them and then squelches them and then smooches them all together, and it's so good.
I think we should use less descriptive words so that I can just keep my composure on air, Mel, you know, because that's too evocative of the experience of watching this movie. But I have to say, like, the minute that I finished watching it, I just descended down this sort of Google rabbit hole, Sarah-Tai, where I was like, how do they do that? 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 And one of the sort of more grotesque scenes, Margaret Qualley sort of talked about being in this bodysuit for like 8 days of filming, and every day she was like, get me out of here. I can't keep doing this. Get me out of here. I can't keep doing this. And there's something to be said about the body horror genre in general. I think like people tend to think of maybe like John Carpenter or think of David Cronenberg. It's a genre that is kind of dominated by men, or we tend to think about men when we think about body horror. But then you have Coraline. You have Coralie. And when Coralie sort of turns her lens to this genre, something feels a little bit different. What does it feel like when a woman is directing body horror?
I mean, I think that most like generally speaking, most well done body of horror always has a political element. You know, that's kind of what it was born out of historically. I was thinking a lot about Brian Usna's film Society while I was watching this, and thinking about how this was like a lovely, like gendered Dorian Gray transformation of some elements we saw in that. I think that she really has like a respect for the genre and the craft, as Mel was saying. And I think that what she brings to this is that gendered experience, that frustration of the gendered violence that one experiences, that one maybe puts on themselves, you know, that women are expected to put on themselves. I also think that, you know, like most art, there is a spectrum of interpretation. For myself, watching this as a trans person, I was like, this is gender dysphoria. This is so, and like, I won't give any spoilers, but the end moment, that like, that's what I feel at the end of the day. When I try to make myself up to leave the house, I'm like, this is it, babes. Let me squelch on to live another day in my trans body. And I think that, you know, that gendered experience being shared so affectively and is what makes it so immediate, you know. And I think, you know, there are some elements of her satire which are a little bit on the nose, especially regarding men. And we saw that a little bit in her first film, Revenge, which is a rape revenge film. It came out in 2017. But at the same time, it's that kind of like twin dual pole of like, this is a very urgent, very immediate, very understood experience. And also like this genre gives itself over to silliness. It's like silliness and politicized, my favorite combination.
I just see like Mel vigorously nodding as you were sort of talking about that. Mel, do you want to
Big
add
nods.
anything? Do you want to add anything there?
No,
or-
just the gender of it all. You feel it in your bones, and in the squelching of it all. We are all just squelchy at the
We're
end,
all
at the end of
just
the day.
Really
birthing
leaning-
more ectoplasmic forms.
really leaning on squelching today, as that's the word. That's the word of this movie. Amil, listen, this is a satire about sexism and beauty standards, and Demi sort of spoke about her hopes for this movie to Variety. Here's what she said.
My hope is that it would bring a cultural shift, that it would be part of the conversation that starts to move the needle in allowing us to see the importance of being more gentle, more kind to ourselves, and just to look at how much value are we placing on how we look, how we're perceived, especially over how we feel about ourselves.
Amil, what do you think? When you listen to that, like, do you feel like this movie about body image, does it feel groundbreaking to you?
No, it's not groundbreaking. It's not particularly subversive or subtle, but it doesn't need to be, because it gets the point across, which is, you know, like Demi Moore has said about her own self, it's like, where that obsession with your body and how you look and the value that you place, that others place on you and that you place upon yourself based on your physical appearance, where that takes you, what it says about the society that we live in, that it is encouraged, that it is rewarded, and just, the lengths that we go to. I was thinking about this recent Cut beauty issue where they looked at different sort of age groups and how much money they spend on skincare and beauty.
Yeah.
And, you know, you would sort of think logically, like as people get older, they spend more on, you know, like youth defying age creams and what have you. But overwhelmingly it was people in their 20s who spent tens of thousands of dollars on Botox, filler, laser facials, vampire facials, and just sort of how sad that all is. You know, Gia Tolentino's written a lot about Instagram face and how social media has also changed our perception of ourselves, who should get plastic surgery, how much we're willing to spend to look better in a selfie. It's all very dark. It's all very sad. And I think that this movie does a great job of just sort of putting that right in your face and forcing you to contend with the physical repercussions of all of that. But no, it's not groundbreaking, and it doesn't really have to be. It's a conversation we're going to keep having. in many different ways.
I feel grateful that this movie exists. I feel like I never want to see it again because I went through just physical journeys as the movie got more and more grotesque. And I appreciate that all of you also went on the same journey as me. My name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Culture critics Amil Niazi, Sarah-Tai Black, and Mel Woods are here. Okay, we got to talk about a new album that is out today. Here's a bit of the lead single from Katy Perry's album, 143. That is Woman's World, Katy Perry, the first single of the new album, 143. Mel, I gotta just tell you, I think you know this. A lot of people hated the song when it was first released. They called it sort of a bland, say nothing feminism. Now we have the album, and I get to ask you this question. Does the album get better after Woman's World?
In my take, no.
Okay.
It falls very firmly into a genre that I often use lovingly and sometimes use negatively, and in this case negatively, gay noise. You think about artists like Slater, you think about artists like Kim Petras, you think about RuPaul's original music. These are songs that will do fine being lip synced by a drag queen somewhere, or being blasted in the background of a club where you're trying to like shout a conversation at somebody. But beyond that, culturally, I don't know how much oomph they have to them. And it's really funny that, that was my first association, because as soon as I looked at the track list and was like, wait, Kim Petras is just literally on this album. Like, it is like pretty literal in that sense. And so it feels like, kind of behind the times, it's somehow both dated and trying to be keeping up with it. And I think it hits even worse than it may have otherwise on the wake of what a summer of pop music that we just had.
Yeah.
It's hard to be like, here's my feminist anthem. Here's my, fun party song. Here's my like little silly bit, when you have, in that order, Chappell Roan, Charlie XCX, and Sabrina Carpenter, who are all doing feminist anthem, fun party song, and little silly bit better and more interestingly and more relevantly. So I think it hits with a bit of a thud. I will be putting it on my gym playlist, and that's where it belongs. And I look forward to watching somebody on Drag Race lip sync Women's World one day. And that's about it for me.
But I think like the thing that Mel said there gets at the crisis for me, Amil. Like the idea that Katy Perry is sort of still trying to be competitive with a contemporary pop moment, when I don't fundamentally think of her as a contemporary pop artist, right? Like I think like she had that moment in between, she dominated everything between 2009 to like 2013, 2014. It is okay to find a different kind of pop mode. I would have expected that she would do that. She didn't do this on this album. She's trying to say, I'm just as competitive as the Chappell Roans and the Charlie XCXs. And I don't know, is there a case to be made for this moment in Katy Perry, Amil?
I mean, for the current iteration of Katy Perry, no, as much as I'm saddened by that, because
you're a fan.
I am a fan, or I'm a fan of a version of Katy Perry.
Yeah.
Do I ever feel like a plastic bag? Of course I do. Don't we all?
Yes.
But I mean, I'm actually so glad that these two things are in conversation on this show right now, because I'll be damned if Katy Perry isn't Elizabeth Sparkle, just forever trapped in her own freaking squelchy amoeba, just like Katy Perry evolve, Katy Perry grow. She has so much, I think, interesting, hopefully, to say about where she's at in her life right now. She's about to turn 40. She has had a child. She has been raked through the coals in the tabloids. She is aging in an industry that, forget acting throws you out at a certain age. Like, pop stardom, you have the briefest of moments.
The briefest window.
And that she's lasted this long gives her a platform to say something interesting. And the fact that she's still giving us these like hollow platitudes. She needs to take the substance and figure it out.
A big deep sigh from Amil. Sarah-Tai, like, I'm interested in this idea because to me, like, Katy Perry is someone who, at the peak of her powers, peak Katy Perry is someone who sort of like gave us weird, interesting phrasing, right? Like the idea that you would, she would make a phrase like, do you ever feel like a plastic bag? An iconic line is actually a testament to her charisma and her ability to sort of deliver hits. And what I hear on this record is a record that literally anybody could have made. Like, it just sounds a little bit anonymous to me. And I think Amil's right to point out that, like, look, pop is very unforgiving to women, as particularly as they get like into the late 30s. They got to figure out sort of a different identity. But we're also talking on the day that a new Nelly Furtado album just dropped. And like, to me, like, Nelly Furtado is someone who has threaded that needle, kind of figured out, like, here's a way for me to be not in my 20s and still be a pop star and still sort of command a voice and a position and a point of view. And so when you hear this album, do you see a point of view from Katy Perry?
I think that's the number one thing that's missing is like it doesn't hit that positive gay noise as Mel illustrated for us, point where it's like campy and funny. And so like I think a formative moment for me was like Snoop Dogg's guest verse on California Girls, like bikinis, zucchinis, martinis, no weenies, just a king and his queenie. Like, what sick mind thought of that? Oh my God, that's gonna be on my tomb. So greetings, loved ones. Like, punch me in the face. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. And I think that here it's like we're not actually rising to the occasion of either like giving us amazing glossy pop songs like Teenage Dream, and also not giving us like the camp, not giving us like the performance of like, Kim Petras is on this, for instance. Like, there's no Coconuts level of fun here at all. It sounds like it was made by AI that was very much like geared toward preteens. It's really not making me feel my white girl pop fantasy, which despite the phrasing, I do love to feel like I'm in my little convertible with my other little white girl friends going to the mall. Like, oh my gosh, it's not giving us that.
The whole group chat just nodded along, being like, yes, we all want to be in that convertible.
It's missing fun. There's no fun. There's no like natural, audacious, bold, wild fun. It did feel like AI.
I would also be remiss to sort of skip this particular part of the story, which is like she went back to a well that has given her some of those hits, which is like she's worked with someone like Dr. Luke. Dr. Luke is a producer who he was accused of rape by Kesha. He has maintained his innocence. He then sued Kesha for defamation, and their case was settled at a court last summer. But like Katy Perry was under a lot of pressure to explain why she worked with Dr. Luke, especially on a feminist anthem. And here she is on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
I understand that it started a lot of conversations, and he was one of many collaborators that I collaborated with. But the reality is it comes from me. The truth is I wrote these songs from my experience of my whole life going through this metamorphosis. And he was one of the people to help facilitate all that, one of the writers, one of the producers. And I am speaking from my own experience. Like when I speak about Woman's World, I speak about feeling so empowered now as a mother, as a woman.
I don't know what any of that was. Like I've listened to that clip so many times, I still don't know what that was. Amil, how do you think Katy has handled the criticism about Dr. Luke?
Terribly. I think everything she said on the Call Her Daddy podcast seemed like someone else was like literally had their hand up a Katy Perry puppet and was just saying what they thought people wanted her to say. If that was true, if this album really was authentically Katy Perry's metamorphosis from pop star to, mother, then maybe I would have thought about that statement a little bit deeper. But the fact is, as we've just said, it was so inauthentic. The words are just empty nothingness. So to say that is what you felt was your story and only Dr. Luke could help tell that story, we know it's false. It rings false. She said something else on that podcast about how when Orlando Bloom cleans her kitchen, it just is like her husband. It's the most romantic thing in the world. And that's what like really gets her so hot. And I was thinking, Orlando Bloom doesn't clean your kitchen. You don't clean your kitchen. So why are you here telling us this obvious lie, much like the Dr. Luke lie? And it was like, oh, right, Katy Perry, you are trapped in a version of pop stardom that existed when you were like a teenager and you don't know how to get out of it. And no one around you is encouraging you to be honest. And I think that all of this fell so flat because she hasn't been honest about anything, from Dr. Luke to Orlando Bloom cleaning her kitchen to that this album is authentically her. It all rings false. And I think that's why no one is connecting to it. She's not even connected to it.
I think that is a harsh, but also excellent and truthful place to leave it. Amil and Sarah-Tai and Mel, you guys are a delight. Thank you so much for being here. We got to leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course,
Thank you.
anytime. Sarah-Tai Black is a film critic in Toronto. You can read the review of The Substance in the Globe. Amil is a writer at The Cut. And Mel Woods is a senior editor at Extra. This is Commotion.